Hi guys, tonight we're going to be talking about dividing fractions. So we've learned how to multiply fractions and how to multiply mixed numbers. So today we're going to learn how we divide, and some of you have seen this before, but we're going to look at this closely tonight. Okay, a few words that you need to know for this assignment is first divisor. A divisor is the number that you divide by. So if I'm doing 8 divided by 4, 4 would be my divisor. My dividend is the number that's being divided. So again, 8 divided by 4, 8 would be my dividend because it's the one that's getting divided. My quotient, this is a word we hear quite often in math. A quotient is an answer to a division problem. So if you remember, a product was the answer of a multiplication problem. A quotient is the answer to a division problem. So if I did 8 divided by 4, I get 2. 2 would be my quotient. My reciprocal, this is a new word. A reciprocal is the number I use to multiply to make 1. That sounds kind of tricky, but it's just when two numbers whose product is 1, or if I have a fraction, I'm going to flip it, and we'll see what that means in just a minute. Just go ahead and write down that definition. Okay, so before we get started, let's talk about a property, and I'm going to go ahead and write property next to this because that was left off. Property. Okay, we want to talk about multiplicative inverses. Now, those are some big words. Multiplicative means that I'm multiplying, and an inverse, it's kind of like an opposite. We'll see exactly what that means in a minute. And so a property, remember a couple of videos we talked about those mathematicians that came up with properties. Property is something that's been proven to be true. So a long time ago, mathematicians tried this and they found that it worked every time, and so they wrote it as a rule or a property. And the multiplicative inverse property says that when we multiply a number by its multiplicative inverse or reciprocal, those are kind of the same thing, we're going to get 1. So what that means, looking over here, we have 8 times some number. We don't know what that number is just yet. And it's going to give us a 1 as our product. So if we look back to what we talked about yesterday, we know that anything times 1 is itself, right? So if I did 8 times 1, I'm going to get out 8. But what could I do to times 8 by to get a 1 right here instead of an 8? Okay, anything over itself equals 1. We saw that in our notes yesterday right here. Any number over itself equals 1. So if I was somehow able to get 8 over 8, that would simplify and it would give me a 1. So that's what I want to have happen in the end. So to do that, I've got to look at this and see what fraction could I times 8 by to get a 1, or to get 8 over itself. So to get 8 over itself, I would probably want an 8 in the bottom. And on top, I'm going to put a 1 because if I times my top by 1, it's going to stay the same. And remember, if I have a whole number, I can write it as a fraction by putting it over 1. So now I have 8 over 1 times 1 over 8 when I go pow, pow. You can even see if I cross simplified, I'm going to get 8 over 8. Which simplifies to a 1. And again, if I cross simplified, 8 divided by 8, those could both go away. I'd be left with 1s. And I'd multiply straight across, get 1 over 1, which again is just a 1. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, please ask me questions in class. Okay, so the steps tonight, that was just kind of an introduction of what a reciprocal is. So again, right here, 1/8 would be the reciprocal of 8 over 1. Because all I did was I flipped that fraction over. So 8 over 1 turned into 1 over 8. We'll see what that looks like more here in a minute. So the first step, like I was saying, is we want to keep, some of you know where this is going, we want to keep the first number in the problem. The second thing we want to do is change. So we call it change. Some of you learned it as switch. You can write either word right here. I'll squeeze in both of them. You can pick which one you like. So we want to change or switch the operation to multiplication, and then we want to flip the second number. So some of you learned this as keep, switch, flip, or it's keep, change, flip. Either way, it'll get you the same thing. So let's see what that means. If I look at my first example, I want to keep this fraction the same, so my 3/4 is going to stay. I want to change or switch my division to a multiplication, so I'm just going to make that a great big dot for my times. And I want to flip the second fraction, so I want to undo that and put it as a 2/1. I'm just flipping it right upside down. Now I have a multiplication problem, and I can go pow pow, and I would get 6/4, or if I even wanted to double check and cross simplify, 3 and 1 stay the same. 2 and 4 becomes a 1 and a 2. I would get 3 times 1 on top and 2 times 1 on the bottom. I'd get 3/2, and I'm okay with leaving that as an improper fraction. Okay, that was kind of fast. We'll see this again in a minute. All I'm doing is I'm flipping to to divide fractions. All I have to do is flip my second fraction, and then it's the same as multiplying. It's that easy. So looking down here, okay, 2, that's a whole number, but I can convert it to a fraction. Remember, I just put that over 1. We saw that in the last video. So I kept this the same. I put it over 1, but I didn't change the ratio or the fraction at all. I've got to change my sign to a times, and then I'm going to flip this upside down. So if I rewrite this, I've got 2/1 times, now I have a 4/1. Okay, and then I'm ready to just multiply like normal. And to multiply, we start by cross simplifying. 2 and 1 don't simplify, 1 and 4 doesn't simplify, so I'm ready to multiply straight across. Pow, pow. 2 times 4 is 8, 1 times 1 is 1, and then I can simplify that, and again, anything over 1 just stays the same, and I've got 8. Okay, so like it says right here, dividing fractions is easy as pie. Flip the second fraction and multiply. All we do to divide is change it into a multiplication problem, and then it's easy. Okay. And right up here, I forgot to mention this, it says that dividing fractions is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal, or the multiplicative inverse. So right up here, 1/4, I found its multiplicative inverse, which is 4/1, and then I was able to times. So that's what we mean when we flip, is we're doing this right here. This is just kind of the technical math language for what we're doing. Okay. Let's look at a few more examples, because I have a feeling some of us are going to get a little lost on this. Okay, all of these are just division. So the first thing I want to do is I keep this the same. I change this to a times, and then I'm going to flip this upside down. So I've got 1/5 times this upside down gives me 4/3. Now I'm ready to multiply just like I've done before. So I check to see if I can simplify. 1 and 3 don't simplify, 4 and 5 don't simplify, so I'm ready to pow pow. 1 times 4 is 4, 5 times 3 is 15, so I'm left with 4/15. That's as simplified as that one goes. That's all there is to this. Okay, let's look at the next one. I'm going to keep my 3/4. I'm going to change or switch my division to a times, and I'm going to flip this so I get a 10 on top and a 9 on the bottom. And now I'm ready to multiply. So to multiply, I want to cross simplify. 3 and 9 simplify. When I divide both of those by 3, I get a 1 right here. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 4 and 10, they have a common factor of 2. I can see they're both even. If I divide 4 by 2, I'm left with a 2. If I divide 10 by 2, I'm left with a 5. So now I have a 1 times 5 on top, pow, gives me a 5. 2 times 3 on the bottom, pow, gives me a 6, and I'm left with 5/6. So that says that 3/4 divided by 9/10, when I flip and do all of that stuff, that quotient is 5/6. Okay, 2 more. Hopefully this is making sense. Again, if you've got questions, please ask in class. I know we don't all get it the first time we go through it. Okay. I've got to change this to a fraction so I can keep it as a fraction. That's 10/1. That'll change to a times, and I need to flip that, so rewriting, I get 10 over 1 times, now I've got to flip that upside down, so my 12 is going to go on top, and my 5 goes on the bottom. Now I'm ready to multiply. My first step to multiply is to simplify first. So I'm going to look at my diagonals. 5 and 10 can reduce. I divide both of those by 5. I'm left with a 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 1 and 12 can't simplify because 1's as small as it'll go. Now I'm ready to pow. 2 times 12 is 24. 1 times 1 on the bottom is just 1. Simplifying, I'm left with just 24. Okay, last one. I hope these are easy. 3 over 1, I'm going to keep that the same. My divide changes to a times, and I've got to flip that upside down, so I got my 4 on top, my 3 on the bottom. Now I can get it ready to times. I'm going to simplify, so my 3's go away, they're left with 1's. So now I've got everything reduced, so I'm going to go 1 times 4 is 4, 1 times 1 is 1, which is the same as 4. We've had a lot of things work out nicely to be whole numbers. That's all there is to this. Again, we'll go over it in class. If you have questions, make sure you ask. Okay, it's your turn to pause and try. Bye!